What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. It's the divisional round. There's 8 teams left, and there's 3 talking divisional round DFS. It's Meg Shoup, it's myself, and of course, it's Mike McClure. We've got the 4 games to cover. We've got our contest link already in the chat, the YouTube description, the podcast description. So make sure you join that for $5. Meg, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sia. We're down to the Elite 8, and it makes it a little easier to do the research too. So, I'm ready. I'm excited to talk through this divisional round. I think it's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, Mike, there's the 4 games to cover. When you get down to this, I guess you would treat it like Meg and I would treat a typical afternoon slate, right? Is there any sort of differentiator outside of the fact that we get the opportunity to late swap on this 4-game slate?
The opportunity to late swap is pretty great, honestly. Just the way everything's spread out. It's not just one opportunity to late swap, it's every opportunity. You'll essentially even have time to see the entire result of that Denver-Buffalo game before you get into playing San Francisco-Seattle. And then, of course, you'll have those 2 games. So, yeah, it's different than a normal afternoon slate because of that. The matchups are interesting. The injuries that we've got in a couple of these games make things very, very interesting as well. And of course, just ownership game is pretty critical. We'll talk about it a lot with my cheat sheet later, my favorite stack. There's some opportunities, I think, that don't normally present themselves like this on a normal short afternoon slate.
Yeah, very interesting. Toward the end of the show, we will give out our cheat sheets. Instead of Mike giving out his top 3 at each position, just because we only have so many players to choose from, Mike's also going to do a cheat sheet along with Meg and I. What's up, Grey Goose Hayes? What's up, Truth Concussions? We got some people in here. Hit the like button if you could. And speaking of names, I should mention before we get to Bills Broncos that the top 5 from last week's contest, Bill Bratsky was number 1, Ramajama number 2, Elori 906 was number 3, and Jay Couch and Max 40 rounded out the top 5. Max 40 is a familiar name. I think he has placed recently before. Let's get to it, Meg and Mike. Let's get to the Bills and the Broncos. This is the second highest total of the 4 games, and I will mention, Mike, if we get into some major weather issues, maybe we can talk about that. But we see the forecast here, 40 degrees, partly sunny. The wind's pretty much down, gusts 17 miles per hour, but I don't think that's really going to be a factor here. The Buffalo receivers, just really banged up. Gabe Davis, Tyrell Shavers, both out. Curtis Samuel, questionable. So a lot of injuries to monitor here. Meg, I'm going to start with you. Broncos, a 1.5-point favorite. Like I said, a 45.5-point total. Where are you looking in this one?
You can always go Josh Allen. He played Superman last week. He can absolutely do it again. He's playing a bit banged up himself, but he's gonna do a Superman thing. So Josh Allen obviously in the pool, but I really wouldn't force it anywhere else with the Bills. Against a very, very tough Broncos defense. I think I like a lot of other spots on this slate. You could do Shakir with Allen. You could do Kincaid. You could even do James Cook. I'm likely on the times I do play Allen, just going to play Allen, but I actually might play Allen less than the field, just because we've seen when he's played some really good high pressure or high defenses that get to the quarterback, right? Like Houston, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Atlanta. That's when he's had his lower fantasy output game. So I might get a little contrarian, and I might do, like, if I'm doing, 6 or 8 lineups, I may only do 1 Josh Allen lineup and lean into some other stacks more. And so, I do have Allen in the pool. We know he can be Superman, but we also know there's a world where when the defense gets a lot of pressure, those can be the games that Allen might have a lower fantasy output game. And especially with his lack of weapons, I might be a little lower than the field on Allen.
Mike, Josh Allen certainly makes sense at 7,100. I can tell you when I built my first lineup, which is not going to be a lineup I necessarily keep, I couldn't fit Josh Allen in it because of some of the other players I wanted to fit it. It ended up being a Caleb Williams lineup, by the way, and I had Luther Burden to stack him with, although I honestly think there's other stacking partners, obviously Loveland, but I think DJ Moore has the ability to spike as much as Luther Burden does, for example. We can get to that game later, but my point, Mike, is that I didn't get to Josh Allen in that one lineup. Doesn't mean I'm not going to make 5 or 10 lineups where Josh Allen is in 1 or 2 of them. How you feeling about Josh Allen, and who else do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'm feeling good about Josh Allen just from a volume standpoint. I think he's clearly going to be there. I think they're going to find ways to score. I'll play him. I'm far more interested in the Buffalo side than the Denver side personally. And it's not that I don't like the Denver side. It's just it's coming with a little bit more ownership than I would have liked to see to jump on it. So Buffalo, I'll be playing Brandon Cooks quite a bit. In pairing them with Josh Allen. I think the tight ends are playable. I think it's another week where you can absolutely play multiple tight ends in your lineup, just the way they're priced. As far as the game itself, though, I would say I'm relatively underweight this game relative to the other games on the slate. And that can be good or that can be bad. It'll be great if it's not a shootout and doesn't go well, just having all the ultimate late swap flexibility. Yeah, I have interest in Josh Allen. I'll play some Josh Allen. Other than that, I don't know that I'm going to play. I think where I'll be different than the field in a major way is I don't know that I'll have any Denver exposure.
So, Meg, I was on HQ last night and I was giving out some leans and some props and things of that nature. I kind of liked the under in this game. And I do think that speaks to a little bit of what Mike was talking about. Like maybe this isn't the best game to get too involved with, in spite of the fact that it's a reasonably high total, relatively speaking. I guess my question for you, Meg, is first of all, the Brandon Cooks look makes a ton of sense. I don't know that I'm personally going to get to Khalil Shakir in spite of the fact that he can rack up all those catches. And on DraftKings, for example, that PPR element is really important. I don't mind Brandon Cooks. I don't even mind Keon Coleman, but I'm not really in love with getting to any of these receivers, not really in love with Kincaid or Knox. It sounds like you're not either. And I just wonder about the running back. So, Meg, my question for you is, RJ Harvey 6,200, James Cook is 7,300. It's a good matchup for RJ Harvey. It's not a great matchup for James Cook. Are you interested in those two running backs?
I have more interest in RJ Harvey. I actually likely will get to other spots on the slate above these two, but I have more interest in RJ Harvey than I do James Cook for that matchup reason. So I will say that, and that's a good call out about, I didn't mention Brandon Cooks as a potential stacking partner if you wanted to with Josh Allen. You know, obviously a tough matchup, but I do think for his price, he's definitely in my player pool. So I wanted to add that. And then I do have some interest on the Denver side too.
Yeah, I mean, RJ Harvey 6,200 certainly makes sense. I'm not going to exclude him from my pool. I'm not super excited because frankly, there's other running backs that we're going to talk about that we're very excited about, or at least more excited about. Jaleel McLaughlin 4,200. If you wanted to get really cute in a huge contest, I mean, I don't hate that play to try to fit other pieces in. As far as the Denver receivers, I think Sutton is fine, but I'm not going to play him at 5,900. Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant. I feel like I'd be more willing to take a shot. Again, it's four games here. I'd be willing to take a shot at Pat Bryant at 3,900 perhaps. But yeah, Mike, is there anything else to say on this game? I mean, Bo Nix is only 5,800 and people are playing Bo Nix. So what are your thoughts on him, Mike?
Yeah, I don't mind it. Look, this game, Mike, as much as I want to fade it, I think there's absolutely scenarios that it's the highest scoring game on this slate. I fully want to recognize that. If you think Denver's going to win, Denver, they have no chance of winning this game if they don't score 30 points, in my opinion. They must put 30 points on the board. If you like Denver in the game, which they're a 1.5 point home favorite, I would be looking to the over in the game if you like Denver, and I'd be looking to Denver heavily in this spot. I personally am not on it. More of that is also waiting and, just more of the game theory angle in DFS and wanting a little more time to make those decisions. So I'm mostly fading for that reason, but if I am playing, it would be a Josh Allen heavy build. I think Denver can just score in too many ways personally, and it's a little too spread out.
Meg, it looked like you had some follow-up on Denver.
Yeah, I totally agree with Mike that Denver is catching the ownership and to be wary of that on this, very short slate. However, I do have some interest in Bo Nix to Courtland Sutton and just keeping it a skinny stack and moving on to the other games. Bo Nix, we've seen very inconsistent this season. However, he has popped off for some big games, and those games do seem to be in spots, that you can kind of predict. But the Bills defense is really banged up. And so I kind of want to be cognizant of that and be willing to take advantage of that. Also, Bo Nix, a lot of his bigger games were at home. So at home against a banged up defense, I do like a Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton stack and move on, not try to get the other ancillary Denver pieces. So I will say that, but Mike is right. It is coming with some ownership.
All right, let's move on. If you have questions in the chat, go ahead and ask them, because we might have not covered something in that first game that you want to cover, and we're happy to answer those questions. Let's get to San Francisco and Seattle. This is a very interesting game for a lot of different reasons. The spread here is we've got a 7-point spread. It was 7.5. Now it's 7, Mike. And I remember in the beginning of the week, you kind of liked that 7.5. It could potentially dip to 6.5 if the Sam Darnold news becomes more concerning, but I don't really think it is. He's got an oblique injury that he was limited by on Thursday, but honestly, I think Sam Darnold's going to be totally fine. I really like the running backs on both teams, Mike, in this game. I like JSN. I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford him, but there's a lot of meat on the bone here. Mike, before you start, I have to interrupt because Grey Goose Hayes is in the chat. I have to address this comment. He says, "Hi, everyone. I'm elder sitting my 91-year-old mother, and she is sitting beside me." Grey Goose, drop her name if you would. She asked, "Why does that man with tall hair have his shirt buttoned to the top without a tie on?" And that's a totally fair question to somebody who's never seen me before. What's interesting, just real quick, I know when we were here to talk football, is that I usually have, I practiced law for 13 years. So I always had my shirt buttoned up and an actual tie on. So this to me feels totally normal. But here's what I'm going to do. Matt, our producer, Mike, when you give your answer on what you like in this San Francisco-Seattle game, I've got a tie to my left. I have to get up and get it. So we're going to go to a one shot when Mike starts giving his take. And I'm going to put the tie on for Grey Goose Hayes' mom while I'm basically just going to Meg. I will do it in front of everybody so that, again, Grey Goose Hayes' mom can Birdie is her name? Okay, Birdie, I'm going to put a tie on for you. But Mike, don't do the one shot for me right now. I just want you to do the one shot for Mike so I can get up from my seat, Matt, and he can give his take and all of that.
I want the one shot while you're putting the tie on as well.
We can do that too. I
want to watch Sia tie the tie.
Okay, so Mike, talk to me, and it's only going to take me 30 seconds to get this. Talk to me about San Francisco, Seattle.
All right. San Francisco, Seattle. I can easily talk for 30 seconds here, possibly 30 minutes. I love San Francisco in this game. I don't know if they win it outright, but I think that they, in DFS, are extremely stackable and will have all the opportunity to rack up the points. So Brock Purdy, by far my favorite quarterback to play on this slate. Part of that, though, is ownership specific. I think he's going to be single digits here. I think all the other ownership is going elsewhere. You get to stack up the Rams. You could stack up the Bears. We know that Josh Allen's playable, and we're seeing a little ownership trend towards Denver. Nobody wants to play San Francisco on the road against the awesome Seattle defense. I'm willing to play it at the price points and the ownerships. I think Christian McCaffrey is as close to a free square on this slate as you can get. He's going to be in every lineup of mine. I'm going to be playing Brock Purdy with them, and I'll play Jake Tonjes at 3,400. And I think kind of where San Francisco's going. I think they're likely neutral or trailing, but I think they have the ability to score. So their implied team total, now sitting around 18 to 19 points. I'm building as if I have their team total at 24. So I'm making this game a lot more competitive. We'll see if Sia is back, and if he is, I think we should have a longer discussion.
I'm totally back
on Sam Darnold, because I am far more worried about Sam Darnold than I think the rest of the crowd is.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so when I said I wasn't worried about Sam Darnold, I was kind of just talking. Like, if you have more insight and more, I guess, speculation you want to provide, let me know. Okay, so here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the tie that Birdie wants me to put on. I think she'd be more comfortable if I put it on. I don't know that she wants me to put it on. So here we go. 13 years of practicing law, 3 years of law school led me to this moment. It's me and it's Birdie. It's San Francisco and it's Seattle. I can't wait to hear what Mike has about Sam Darnold. But here we go. Pretty easy to tie a tie, ladies and gentlemen, when you've been doing it for as long as I have. And here we are. We've got the proper knot. And all I got to do at this point is just turn this thing down. Birdie, how do I look? Ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to San Francisco and Seattle as I get a golf clap as the Sony Open is about to be underway for round 2. Meg, we're going to get back to Sam Darnold. Let me just tell you, I obviously agree with CMC. Funny to say that 8,800 is a free square, but I completely understand the argument. I'm very interested in either Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet. Both of them, I think, could absolutely go off against the San Francisco 49ers. And I feel like people are going to be just not like they're not going to want to play those guys because they don't know who to choose. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall, if he plays, that factors in. Tonjes is only 3,400. There's a lot to talk about here.
Absolutely. First of all, Birdie, I think Birdie likes the tie. I like the tie. That was very impressive. So as far as the 49ers, yeah, I'm lockstep with you and Mike. McCaffrey is the absolute chalk buy for me. Absolutely love him. I like Mike's point about Purdy and his potential ownership. So I think that's a great look. And I think, some of like Ton, just because of his price, might be a higher own, but you're getting low ownership. I like that call. As far as Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet, I'm having a problem deciding, but that's why I wasn't as excited about the first game's running backs, because I like all the running backs in this game. I want McCaffrey and probably a min one of Walker or Charbonnet in my lineup. So I really do like the Seattle running backs. I really don't have a strong lean one versus the other. And I'm probably the easy answer for me is I'm probably going to play both. Some lineups with Christian McCaffrey, Walker, some lineups with Christian McCaffrey, Charbonnet.
Mm-hmm. Mike, talk to me about Sam Darnold and talk to me about other pieces you like in this game.
Yeah. So Sam Darnold, they've had some time off. The injury has popped up a little bit. I personally think the oblique is the most important muscle for a quarterback in the NFL, personally. Mm-hmm. And the reason for it is it's responsible for the rotation when you're throwing the football. If it's off a little bit, we've seen the margins in this game that timing matters, particularly against an opponent that really knows you well. This is a third matchup in division against teams that know each other extremely well. Sam Darnold, to me, is someone that has had questionable timing during the season from time to time in terms of having some of that timing with receivers. If you're feeling anything in the oblique, it can throw off the timing and some of the velocity on the ball. So I personally think it's a bigger deal. I think that everyone's aware of it. They'll definitely look to hit them as often as they can, as early as they can. And I just like San Francisco here. So I'll be basically the one way that I'd like to get different is just fading Darnold and JSN completely. And, if they beat me, they beat me. But I think that there's a scenario with all the high scoring guys on the slate that if you get Purdy and McCaffrey right, and Puka does what Puka does, it's going to take a special performance from JSN to just truly eliminate you anyway. Right. So I think that fading that side is going to be my favorite way to play it. As far as the running backs over there, love Walker and Charbonnet both. I think they're both going to have a ton of touches. I think one of the more telling things is the attempts props on Darnold are now down to 28, which I think is very low. I think this game's going to be competitive. I'm moving San Francisco's team total up essentially to 24 from the 18 that's implied, giving them an extra touchdown in this game, which is why I'm very much in on Purdy. And again, I think he's going to be the lowest owned quarterback by a wide margin.
Interesting question here about, I think UI2K has several interesting questions, including Kyle Juszczyk question. But if you're playing Brock Purdy, Mike, on this 4-game slate, is it Purdy, McCaffrey, and somebody like who else would be added in here? We got Juwan, we got potentially Ricky Pearsall, Demarcus Robinson, who becomes larger impact if Ricky Pearsall's not playing. Jake Tonjes at 3,400. Who else do you add in here?
Yeah, so there's many options, but for me, it's just Tonjes. I'm going to play Purdy, McCaffrey, and Tonjes at either tight end or flex, and then kind of move on from that. And then those builds, I would play at least one of the Seattle running backs, maybe both, but at least one, which would be Walker or Charbonnet. And then I'll play both receivers for the Rams. I'll have Puka Nacua and Devontae in there. And really kind of shield myself from a huge Matthew Stafford day, as long as I've got Puka and Devontae in there.
Meg, are you in on any of the receivers? And when I say in on, I'm really talking about likelihood to play them. Any of the receivers on the San Francisco or Seattle side?
I definitely had JSN in the pool, but actually in having this conversation, I think I might be lower owned on him than the field. I don't know if it'll be like a complete full fade, but I might be kind of take that stand as well. don't think I'm going to have many other Seattle. Definitely not interested in the other Seattle receivers. I have so much interest in the Seattle running backs. I do have some interest in potentially, looking at a lower owned 49ers receiver. I think it depends. I haven't built lineups with them yet, but I would consider it because I do think there's some ownership leverage if you think Purdy's getting there.
I think as far as the receivers are concerned, and we got one more question on this game that I want to get to you both on, but as far as the receivers are concerned, if Ricky Pearsall plays, I expect him to be low owned because people are going to be kind of afraid to play him for obvious reasons. I don't hate that at 4,800, but if Ricky Pearsall is out for some reason, Demarcus Robinson at 4,400 has clearly shown like he can step up and is probably the more reliable target right now for Brock Purdy than Juwan Jennings. So that's just me speculating, but Demarcus at 4,400 would be interesting to me. There's a question from Uwe2K saying, what about playing Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, and Zach Charbonnet? Mike, I'll start with you. When you look at the rest of the running backs on the slate, it does seem doable to do that.
It's extremely doable. Very, 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 very much doable. I like all three of them. McCaffrey clearly number one. As far as picking between Walker and Charbonnet, that part gets obviously difficult. We've kind of talked about it all year, really. Charbonnet does tend to get a little more work in the red zone, which is where I would want to lean, particularly if you're fading the passing game. Because if you're fading the passing game, you're going to want those running back touchdowns. So I would lean Charbonnet over Walker in that point. But yeah, it's extremely doable. And I may have a lineup with all three. The Purdy lineup that I like the most has McCaffrey and Charbonnet.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I like Meg. Would you agree? Like, because of the red zone potential, I like both these guys, but Zach Charbonnet at 5,300 probably a better play than Kenneth Walker at 5,500, or is it just even for you? Just pick one and move on.
It's pretty even for me because we saw in the last game they both got there. Charbonnet with the touchdowns, Walker with just some massively explosive runs. So I really do like both of them. I do think you could play all three in this game. I would probably more likely do that on like the Saturday only slate. But I do think it can be done because we saw both of them get there last week. Maybe like Mike said, a slight lean to Charbonnet because of the touchdown equity. But I'd say overall, I really do like both Seattle running backs. But when I do all three running backs in this game, it will probably more likely be on the Saturday slate for me.
We do our NFL player prop show at 3:00 every Friday. So we're a few hours removed from that. I do that with Dave Richard, Claudia Bellafato, and Prop Stars. And Kenneth Walker is a prop I might bring to the show in terms of his over yardage in that 55 to 59 range. I will tell everybody that the rushing attempt prop for both of these guys is a lot closer than people might think. At this point, I think Kenneth Walker's in that 13.5 range, whereas Zach Charbonnet's in the 11.5 range. And that correlates pretty well, Mike, to what you were saying with the pass attempts with Sam Darnold at I think 28.5 in most places. So we're looking at a lot of runs, and we've seen Seattle really lean into the run recently with both of these running backs. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if both of them hit their rush attempt over and both of them hit their rushing yards over. And then it just comes down to explosive plays and touchdowns. Mike, did you have any follow-up there?
No, not really. The only other guy that we haven't mentioned that I would potentially mention is Barner at tight ends. He's still playable. There's just so many tight ends that can be played on this slate. I mean, I would be comfortable playing 9 different tight ends, I'm pretty sure, on the slate. 7 for sure, like without a doubt. Like just looking at him, you could talk me into Colston Loveland, Hunter Henry, Dalton Kincaid, Tonjes, both Parkinson and Higbee, you could talk me into. Barner, you could talk me into. And frankly, you could talk me into a scenario of playing Dalton Schultz even with no Nico Collins. So there's just, it's by far the deepest position on the slate is the tight end spot. Yeah.
Well, we'll get to no Nico Collins and potentially Dalton Schultz. And it does look like Nico Collins is not going to play with that concussion. That's the next game we're going to get to, though. It's the Texans. It's the Patriots. It's right after this message from our partners.
Well, you need your sports news anywhere?
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
We move to Sunday at 3:00 for game 3 of the divisional round. It's Sia, it's Meg, it's Mike, it's DFS, Texans, Patriots. Meg, I'll start with you here. We've got a 40.5 point total. We've got the Patriots laying 3 points here at home. You know, this is another tricky situation, especially with the Patriots running back situation, but also with their receiver situation. I mean, it really could be anybody. Which leads me to a prop I put in on Sportsline and on the early edge. I think, Meg, it might have been the show I was on with you where I had Stephon Diggs under 50.5 receiving yards. And it's not that I hate Stephon Diggs in this game. I'm just mentioning it because Drake May throws it, including the running backs, to the tight ends, the running backs. We got Kayshon Boutte, Kyle Williams, Demario Douglas, Efton Chisholm. There's just a lot to go around here, which, Meg, for me, doesn't get me super excited about the Patriots side. And it's very hard for me to get excited about the Texans side.
I am in full agreement with you. Like that prop, I got burned last week being very in on Diggs, thinking, okay, first big playoff game here for May and the Patriots and leading into the vet. And it's so funny, Drake May reminds you so much of like a Josh Allen, and their offense feels like a Bills offense where it's hard to trust which receiving option could be the one. They just really, like you said, spread it out. So it's hard to tell week to week who's going to be the guy. And then against the Texans defense, no, thank you. I'm not going to try to predict that. So I am pretty much, honestly, not very interested in this game at all. I just think it could be a defensive battle like we saw in that Patriots-Chargers game. And I just don't have a ton of interest at all. I do think with Nico Collins likely out, I will have Jaden Higgins in the pool because he'll have to run that kind of Nico Collins X receiver role. But other than that, I don't see me getting there. The other 3 games, the 2 we talked about and the one we're about to talk about, I just have a lot more interest. But I totally agree with you on the Stephon Diggs prop and just how the Patriots play it so spread out. I'm not going to try to make a guess on that, especially against the Texans.
Mike, I think it's going to be really easy to write off this game for people. And I just wonder, is there an angle anywhere? Because I look at like Christian Kirk, for example, at 4,100. I mean, we could envision a game script where the Texans are down and they have to pass, but I still don't know how successful that's going to be with CJ Stroud on the road against a good New England defense. But Xavier Hutchinson, only 3,400, Kirk, only 4,100, Jaden Higgins, who can make a big play, is 4,600. Dalton Schultz, of course, we talked about at 4,200. I got to be honest, I don't see a lot of angles in here.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the angle is it's a 4-game slate. And one of these teams could score 24 points. And if they score 24 points and 1 or 2 players score, like if one player has 2 touchdowns, you're going to need them probably, depending on the position and the price point. So it's easy to write it off. There will be payoffs available if you're willing to go there in terms of odds, essentially. I don't know that I'm getting a bunch there. Let me see in 10. I get a little. Dalton Schultz is the first guy in that's popping up. I think it'll be somewhat contrarian, maybe. I'm probably not getting anywhere, but the defenses could be popular. Hutchinson and Higgins are somewhat interesting. If I were speculating on the passing game, it would certainly be on the Houston side, not the New England side. I'll say I'd stack Houston before New England, TBD on how much I actually do it.
Yeah, Mike, there is a question that implicates the other games too, but you were in the chat while you were talking a few minutes ago about saying, hey, tight end is going to be a really important position this week in terms of getting it right. Uwe2K is reflecting on that, and he's saying, so it sounds like it could be a 2 tight end week, but which 2? And so I don't know if you have an answer to that. The reason I bring it up is because the lineup that I built that I really liked, which for the record has Caleb Williams as the quarterback, which ended up being in there. I usually start with the quarterback position, but I ended up kind of ending with the quarterback position. So Caleb Williams ended up being like the process of elimination guy from a price standpoint. But that's it. The lineup I built that I really love is a 2 tight end lineup. And it just so happens from a price standpoint, it ended up being Tonjes and AJ Barner. I could go somewhere else with AJ Barner, but are there 2 tight ends that keep coming up for you, Mike?
No, all of them continue to come up. The guy that I'm getting more than anyone is Tonjes, but that's because I'm much higher than the field is on San Francisco. So I'm running my baseline as if San Francisco scoring 24. Everyone else is running if they're scoring 17 to 18. I like Tondras, I like Barner, but the ones that I really honestly like the most and that I'll be looking to play will be both of the Rams tight ends. It'll be Higbee and Parkinson. Both are too cheap. Higbee, very interesting to me at 32. Parkinson got the touchdown last week. Higbee's still out there a lot. He was out there a lot in the week 18 game as well. I've been very impressed with what I saw there. I think the Rams tight ends are very interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking at some props here because I know Colby Parkinson and Tyler Higbee. So I'm looking at receptions, but Higbee is more likely to get 3 than Colby Parkinson. Again, I'm just talking receptions, but we know in the tight ends case, some of those receptions can be high value receptions. So Higbee is a really interesting one to me. Meg, are there any tight ends that are jumping out to you outside of Tonjes? I know we mentioned him.
Yeah, there are 2. They're in the game we're about to talk about. I agree with Mike about the Rams tight ends. I had built a lineup pre-show and I love it. And it's Loveland and Parkinson in that one, but you could certainly do Loveland, Higbee. I like Loveland and a Rams tight end. That's going to be my favorite 2 tight end build. So I did have an official answer to that question. I really like Loveland. We'll get to why I like him so much for the next game, but those are my 2 favorite.
I love that. I think I want to get to some comments in the chat real quick before we get to that Bears game. But I think if you wanted to get really cute in this game and you wanted to like pull a player that I assume is going to be very low owned, I think Ramondre Stevenson would be. Oh, Meg. Okay, so you were kind of nodding your head. That's who you were thinking of too at 5,800, and it's because we could see a scenario where the Patriots are playing from a positive game script, but also Ramondre's getting a lot of splash plays in the receiving game as well. I could see a scenario where he gets, 15 to 17 carries. It's a positive game script. He scores a receiving touchdown, maybe even scores a rushing touchdown. That's something where Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, not a lot of people are going to be playing Ramondre this week.
Right. I think you're going to get him at lower ownership just because of the defense that the Patriots are playing. And like you pointed out everything that I just put my hand up for. Ramondre is the one to consider here at lower ownership for all the reasons you laid out, especially because I think it's taken us a couple of weeks to realize, oh, wow, Ramondre is the one that's getting more of the receiving work lately, which is really interesting. And I'm not saying he's going to explode for 40 or 50 yards each week, but he is getting more of the receiving work than Henderson. So I really actually do like Ramondre. He's in my pool, but I really do like Ramondre if I am doing a 3 running back build.
We got to get to the highest total here, the Rams and the Bears. And Meg, I am going to start with you with this 48.5 point total, but I do want to shout out the chat. I don't know if I mentioned this after I put the tie on. Apparently Birdie says she likes how I look way better with the tie on. So shout out to Birdie. Bash the like button for Birdie if you haven't already. Uwe2K says that's why this show was the best. Willing to go the extra mile for the listeners. You'll love to hear that. There was somebody else that was saying he cashed in all of his cash game tournaments last week thanks to this show. So we absolutely love to hear that one as well. Alan Presig in here talking about getting green for this weekend. Thank you, everybody, for being in here. Thanks for some of you have already rated and reviewed the show. We always appreciate that as well. But most important, thanks for listening to the show, watching the show, all of those things. Meg, Rams, Bears, a lot to consider here. Instead of just kind of going through the pricing and the players, I'm just going to give you carte blanche to just talk about what you want to talk about in this game.
Sure. Well, I talked about, that I really like the Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton skinny stack, but I also agree with you. I really like a Caleb Williams stack. My Caleb Williams stack is going to start with Loveland though. And this is why. Since week 15 or 16, through obviously the wild card weekend. So the last 4 or 5 weeks, he has a 26% target share where all the receivers have a 12 to 15% target share. So I'll start Caleb Williams, Colston Loveland. He's been his guy. I'm not saying this is going to become the Mahomes Kelsey of the future, but I'm just saying, so these last 4 games, they have a major connection is going on there with Caleb Williams to Colston Loveland, and I'm not going to walk away from it here. So I love that 26% target share. Obviously he's average, I want to say 80 plus receiving yards in these last 4 games as well. So I don't mind doing a double stack with Caleb Williams, but it's going to start Caleb Williams, Colston Loveland stacks for the Bears, and then potentially, adding in a lower owned receiver, because the receivers on the Bears side look to be coming in fairly lower owned, especially Rome Odunze or DJ Moore. So I really like the Caleb Williams stack with Loveland and adding in a receiver too, especially one of the lower owned ones. So I really do love that on the Bears side.
What's interesting about the receivers, and this is like reflected in the lineup that I built as well, where I only had enough money to stack because I didn't have Loveland in the lineup. But Meg, I completely agree with your analysis there. I only had enough money for Luther Burden at 4,700, and I didn't love it, but I was like, okay, Luther Burden can explode. What's going to happen with these receivers is that we're just going to, my guess is we're just going to go to Luther. Like if we're picking receivers outside of Loveland, we're just going to go to Luther Burden at 4,700 because he's 4,700 and people perceive him to have the ability to explode probably more than Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, but certainly he's lesser priced too. So it's just an easy click. Mike, I have a feeling that DJ Moore is just not going to get owned for that reason. And in my opinion, he has the ability to splash just as much as Luther Burden. Now, his floor is extremely low, but I think DJ Moore at 5,200 is a very interesting click. Mike, what do you like in this game? We already talked about Puka Nacua. I know you like that, or I think I know you like that. I know you like Davante Adams a little bit as well. What else do you like in this game?
Yeah, there's a lot to like in this game for me. First of all, hard to ignore what Loveland's done. 15, 13, and 10, I believe, are the three target shares, or the number of targets in the last 3 games. Pretty incredible. I'd sign up for that for an $8,500 wide receiver, let alone a $5,500 tight end.
Good point.
So yeah, I think it's hard to ignore. I think he'll be popular, but for good reason. I personally can't imagine playing a Loveland lineup without Puka Nacua in it, personally. If Loveland's got the opportunity to get 10 to 15 targets again, it's either because they're trailing big, and if they're trailing big, it's likely that Puka has done Puka things, or the game's just an absolute shootout. I think that those two kind of go hand in hand. I would also consider playing one of the Rams tight ends in that same build. I'll probably have at least 4 roster spots from this game, and in some lineups 6. So I think that it's heavy stack. I'm more likely also to, as crazy as it sounds, pay down at QB just a little, meaning I would not play Matthew Stafford while still having 3 of his pass catchers in my lineup. I just think that with some of the rushing upside that Caleb may have, there's a scenario that Caleb could outscore Stafford while Stafford and the Rams win the game. And then I also am going to be paying way down for Brock Purdy, as I mentioned earlier, at 5,600. So saving the $1,000 there, but I'll be stacking the Rams heavily. My average lineup will have at least 3 Rams in it.
Dwayne Austin in the chat says, I suspect onslaughts from this game with CMC and or Josh Allen. So, onslaughts certainly in play here, according to Mike. Meg, there is a play that I kind of want to get to, and it's a little Ramondre Stevenson, Trevion Henderson, like that type of situation. We got a lot of dual running backs going on this slate. Of course, Ramondre and Trevion have a completely different defense to go up against, but I kind of like Kyren Williams, and I don't suspect people are going to be really eager to click his name. And again, on a 4-game slate, I think he's an interesting way to get different. The problem, of course, is when you look at the rushing yard totals, like Blake Corum's catching up. He's close to 50 rushing yards in this game projected, and Kyren Williams is in that low 60s. But again, I just at 6,600, I feel like Kyren is going to be a really tough click. So I might be willing to play that, maybe even in lineups that don't have Puka Nacua. I guess my question for you is, on this Rams side, who are you playing?
Yeah, obviously a lot of the big names, obviously, but Puka, let me go back to, obviously Stafford's in my pool, but I do like what Mike said and playing it more from the Bears side and the Rams pass catchers. I do like playing Kyren Williams. So the Rams, it's Kyren Williams. You could consider Corum, but I lean with you, Kyren Williams. It's obviously the 2 receivers, the target share with the receivers, it goes to the receivers, tight end. It's really not going to the running backs. And it's really just going to those 2 Rams receivers, which is nice. So it's Davante Adams, it's Puka Nacua, and it's the Rams tight ends, either of them. for me. To your point though, and I think this is an excellent point. If you aren't playing Puka, I think you should have one of Kyren Williams or Devontae Adams and tell that story. It's almost like when you're playing Showdown and you tell a story, when the smaller the slate gets, 4 games, and then especially if you're just playing Sunday only 2 games, the smaller the slate gets, the more you want to tell the story. So we see that this is a high total. We think Rams are going to put up some points whether they win or lose. If you're not playing Puka Nacua, I think it's one of Devontae Adams, Kyren Williams. You could play both, or you could play. I have one when I mentioned that Colston Loveland lineup with Colston Loveland, Kobe Parkinson. I also have Devontae Adams, and that's a Caleb Williams stack, bringing it back with not Puka, not Kyren, but both Devontae Adams and Parkinson in that lineup. So I do think you want to tell a story if you're not playing Puka as to why he wouldn't be getting there. And it's likely either Kyren, Devontae Adams, the Rams tight ends.
I love how you laid that out. I mean, I do want to point out, Mike, that, I mean, it's such a Sean McVay thing that Terrence Ferguson, it appears to be healthy and is probably going to play in this game. And I don't know if people have been like following the Sean McVay experience, but anytime there's like a primary tight end that's out or a primary receiver that's out, and we're like, oh, it's going to be, and this dates back to like 5-6 years. Oh, it's going to be like Jordan Whittington, or it's going to be Tutu Atwell, or it's going to be, Colby Parkinson, or whatever the case may be. That next game, it's always the third guy. And Mike, you're talking about getting tight end, right? Terrence Ferguson's only 2,700. I can't imagine he's coming up in your simulations, but he's 2,700.
He's 2,700, and there's absolutely a scenario. There's definitely a scenario. He could be on the field. Yeah. If you like the rest of your lineup, I think it's totally fine. I would probably do it in a Colston Loveland at tight end, Ferguson at flex. And, if you like the rest of your lineup, I think it's fine.
I mean, so like, just to give an example, again, this is if you just really want to get different and just hope you get it right. Ferguson is $500 less than Tyler Higbee. And I just talked about how the easy click on the Bears side, outside of Loveland, of course, is going to be Luther Burden at 4,700, who, oh, by the way, is 500 less than DJ Moore. So I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to mess around with, and you're doing, some different lineups, getting DJ Moore in there at low ownership and Terrence Ferguson there in low ownership, Ferguson could absolutely produce just as much as Higbee or Parkinson on any given day. So it's just something to consider. Again, the floors for these players are pretty low, but these are all things to consider on a short slate. I think we covered that game pretty well. I think it's time to get to our cheat sheets. And this time around, we're all doing cheat sheets. No top 3 from Mike, because we only have a small sample size of players to choose from here. So Mike, you will close us on the cheat sheets. Meg, you will lead us off.
Sure. So my favorite stack is Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton against that very banged up Bills defense. And Bo Nix seems to have his big ceiling games at home and against defenses like this that have some weaknesses and are banged up. Chalk buy for me, Christian McCaffrey. We talked about that at length. I have chalk fade as Jake Tonjes, though. It's just he's coming in at pretty high ownership. But the more we've talked through it on this show, I really do like him and am willing to play him. I'm actually leaning more towards JSN, but I do think that Jake Tonjes is coming in at high ownership. So if you wanted to make a stand there, you could. My contrarian play is DJ Moore. We talked about that. While Loveland is my favorite Bears target, adding in DJ Moore is really adding a nice leverage piece of low ownership. And value play for me is Colby Parkinson. Again, we just talked about this too. You could play any of the Rams tight ends, but Colby Parkinson, I think has some nice red zone usage, and I lean to him, but I'm willing to play any of the Rams tight ends.
All right. I want to get to my cheat sheet and I want to get to Mike's cheat sheet, but let's take another quick break and hear a message from our partners.
This is European soccer's biggest stage.
Written in the stars. What a difference she has made.
The question is, can you handle it? The crowd here feels electric. Stream every match of the UEFA Women's Champions League on Paramount+.
We're back and we're still doing some cheat sheets. Richie Small's in the chat. He says, Pat Bryant smash. I mean, listen, if you get a Denver receiver, right, whether it's Sutton, who's pretty expensive, or Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant, you're going to be in pretty good shape. I just question how that game's going to go in spite of the fact that it's a pretty high total. I'll give out my cheat sheet. I made some changes, and Matt, I don't know if you caught up to these, but I've got Caleb Williams stacks to either Luther Burden or DJ Moore. So forgive me, I'm kind of putting this in at the last second and putting Matt in a tough spot. But Caleb Williams, I'm going to call it to Luther Burden as my stack. My chalk buy is going to be Christian McCaffrey. No news there. My chalk fade is going to be JSN. My contrarian is going to be DJ Moore. Okay, so this looks good. Contrarian play DJ Moore here, and my value play Jake Tonjes. But again, the value play to me can be any of these tight ends that we talked about, even some receivers that we talked about as well. But I think Tonjes at 3,400 makes the most sense. All right, Mike, let's talk about your cheat sheet today.
All right. I'm going to go Brock Purdy as my favorite stack. I think he's going to be so low owned. I think that San Francisco in their current state, they're closer to Seattle than people want to think. And again, we have to separate real life football from DFS football. You told me they're going to be trailing in this game and having to throw and have desperation situations, and you can dump the ball off to Christian McCaffrey and get carried along for the ride on those 80 receiving yards, then yes, absolutely sign me up. Give me Brock Purdy to Christian McCaffrey and Jake Tonjes as my favorite stack. Chalk by, I'd love to get cute here and give you other names, but it's Christian McCaffrey / Puka Nacua. Like I'm going to play Puka in every lineup as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to play Christian McCaffrey, which leads me to my fade. While you can build a lineup that has Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua, and JSN and get away with it, I'm going to fade JSN. I'm a little more worried about Seattle with some of this time off and the oblique injury, facing an opponent that knows them very, very well. I'm going to fade Seattle a little bit in the passing game. So no JSN for me. The contrarian play going to be Brandon Cooks. Mm-hmm. And the weird part about this one is it's not super contrarian. Like everyone's kind of aware that he's out there and that Josh Allen has no weapons really at this point. I like the veteran presence here, though. I think that there's a scenario where Josh is playing backyard football in this game, right? That's what's going to happen. And he kind of is a little bit similar to Shakir. Shakir is going to get more looks and going to get more attention defensively, but Brandon Cooks is just the guy that's had a lot of experience on football fields and is very hungry, very motivated to be there. Not that everyone isn't when they're potentially playing, at this point in the postseason, but I think Brandon Cooks is in a highly motivated spot. The path is clear. Like there's no competition for routes now. I like Cooks a lot as the contrarian play, and then value back to San Francisco here, but you could also / Rams tight ends.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your point on Brandon Cooks, so we have the prop show at 3:00. One I'm considering that I haven't put in is Brandon Cooks, which I think his prop is still 27.5 receiving yards. And I understand he might not get a ton of looks, but Mike, I like what you brought up about the veteran presence. A lot of times that's just like too narrative-y for people. Yeah. But when you only have a few receivers and one of them's Shakir underneath, and you're not really sure how healthy the tight ends are, and you don't know if you can trust Keon Coleman. Like I think Keon Coleman's a fine dart in this game, by the way, but like Brandon Cooks is who you trust downfield. It's who you trust to like run the right route, be in the right spot, and probably come down with a contested catch. Even though Brandon Cooks is kind of small, he's a guy that can go up and get it. I think Brandon Cooks makes a lot of sense, both in the prop market and in any thoughts there, Meg, on Brandon Cooks over 27.5 receiving yards, by the way?
I like that. I did a little Slate ladder on him last week and it paid off, and I am considering it again this week. So I like that look a lot, Sia.
Absolutely love it. All right. Do we have any final thoughts here? I think that just about does it. Meg, any final thoughts here? We covered it, I think.
No, I think we covered it really well. I do think I'll just reiterate the whole thing of this is an extension of Showdown, whether you're playing 2 game or 4 games. So tell a story with whatever lineup you're going to build.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't touch on defense. I think we can touch on it a little bit more here in this spot. Mine by far is San Francisco.
Same.
And the reason for that is they're the cheapest. They're 2,200. I already told you I'm high on their offense, low on Seattle. Look, you got a quarterback that is dealing with an oblique injury. He's going to start the game. He may not finish the game. He could be off in timing. It's a divisional matchup. Just teams that know each other extremely well. And it's just very contrarian. Like the only defense that I think will be lower owned than San Francisco is Chicago. I'm not in the way of the Rams by trying to play the Bears and get cute in that spot. But I will take your pick, right? Do you want to fade that Bears offense right now, or would you rather bet against Sam Darnold, who's looked great for half of his career, and we've made memes about him for the other half of his career, and he's dealing with an oblique injury, right? So for me, it's the Rams by a mile because it lets you play CMC and Puka in every lineup easily.
And Meg, I know you have follow-up. I do want to mention the Bills are 2,600. So it's another cheap defense. I know you can run on the Bills, and maybe that's what the Broncos decide to do. And I don't know how successful it'll be ultimately, but 2,600 is a pretty cheap price when you're going up against, a Bo Nix led offense. Meg, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Mike there. And just, while I know Fred Warner, there's a chance he could, if they move on, that he could play, moving forward. He opened his practice window and everything. While they are, so depleted on defense, Robert Saleh has this defense playing way above their head. So impressive. I know he's got a bunch of head coaching interviews lined up because of how well this defense is playing under him. So this Robert Saleh defense, and like Mike said, the familiarity, and now the third game, I'm leaning into that as well.
Yeah, it also kind of leads me down the road of that Charbonnet Walker conversation where it's like, if you're Seattle, I think you can paper cut San Francisco to a win. You know what I'm saying? I feel like you can just, because this is not a defense that's very good in the front seven. So you can just run on them all day if you want. So that pass attempts under that we talked about and just kind of feeding Walker and Charbonnet makes a lot of sense to me, which probably means that San Francisco defense might not be scoring a ton if we're just going to be running the ball. But again, they're 2,200 and it's a divisional game. They know each other really well. So I think it's very interesting. Mike, you said Seattle's going to be the highest owned defense.
Yeah, Seattle will be the highest owned defense. They're easier to. They're all kind of easy to get to, but certainly still able to get to it. I'm projecting them to be the highest owned, which is why I love kind of doubling down on the Darnold and JSN fades, playing a lot of San Francisco. I think that if I were trying to win $1 million this week, where I would look, the game that I think could have a defensive score on either side is Buffalo and Denver.
Yeah.
I would look at one of those two defenses. I'd even consider playing the Broncos defense in a Josh Allen lineup. I think there is absolutely a scenario Josh Allen or James Cook puts the football on the ground. It's a pick six or a fumble recovery touchdown. Now the Bills are in desperation mode and Josh Allen does Josh Allen things. They score 30 points still. I think that is a scenario that is very, very possible on the slate.
Yeah, we've got the DSTs up here, courtesy of Matt and all the prices and whatnot. Big thank you to Matt for crushing it on this show. I mean, the graphics, Meg, I'm stunned by the graphics, just not because I'm surprised by them, but because at the beginning of the show, when he had the layout of the four games and a couple of notes with respect to the totals and things of that nature. And I understand the audio listeners can't see that, and that's why we say it out loud. But I got to give Matt his flowers here, Meg. These graphics are just very impressive.
Another golf clap. Absolutely. Matt's been crushing it all season. Thank you. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll be back next Thursday. This was a special scheduling change for Friday at 11 o'clock. We'll be back next Thursday at our regular time at 11 o'clock to discuss. We'll only have really 2 games to discuss, 4 teams, and that's going to be really exciting as well. So make sure you join us next Thursday at 11. Big thank you to Matt. Big thank you to Meg and Mike. Do not forget to join our DFS contest. And let's give a big shout out to Grey Goose Hayes and his mom, Birdie, who I believe it was Birdie who said, "Thanks everyone for the DFS info and for making my Mother's Day." So on behalf of Mike, Meg, Matt, and myself and Fantasy Football Today DFS and Birdie, have a great Friday, everybody. We'll see you next week on Thursday at 11 o'clock on Fantasy Football Today DFS.